Hey everyone, good evening. I am Kosha, your host, friend, author, and a secretary at Ahmedabad Book Club. I welcome all my viewers on behalf of Ahmedabad Book Club and Karma Foundation. It's because of your love and confidence. We get an encouragement to bring up every new session, new stories, new people, everything. And today, I welcome you to the show of Top Stories with Ayushman Singh. Welcome, sir, to the platform of Ahmedabad Book Club. Welcome.
Glad to be here. Yeah.
First of all, salute for being a COVID warrior, frontline warrior, freedom fighter kind of for this new India 2020 COVID-19. That runs in your family, I guess. Your uncle received and first Paramveer Chakra of Free India for
Mhm.
the five. Yes. So let me tell my viewers some top stories about you. He is a senior news editor at CNN News 18. He is author. He poet rather, I would say. He has authored a book, Silent Sun, and he is a TEDx speaker. On the recent topic was uh, like recent TEDx topic was philosophy of disruption. He has received Dogra Shurvir Sanman for journalism during COVID time, and he has received 2019 ALS Wordsmith Poetry Award for his poem Triple Talaq, Am I a God's Child? And 2019 Tagore Literary Prize for promotion of literature. We are very much honored and pleased to have you, sir, and to converse about journalism and your book, Silent Sun. So my very first question to you will be poet because of news editor or news editor because of poet or both because of some other incident.
Um, it it started. I started writing poetry when I was in school, and boarding school is a very tumultuous environment where there is a lot of self-reflection. There is a lot of clash of emotions, and you are pretty much on your own in a wilderness. And so to kind of find yourself in that boarding school environment, poetry was a very important medium for me to make sense of who I am and what I am aspiring
Right.
to be. So I started writing there, and it was I mean, even though boarding school has a lot of structure, um, on an emotional and growth trajectory, it was a very chaotic place where we are always struggling to find out who we are, how do we fit in, know what our path is in life. So in that situation, poetry was a huge help for me because it helped me digest my emotions when, in an all boys boarding school, to talk about your feelings is kind of looked down upon. And in that scenario, for me, writing poetry was very therapeutic. And
Okay.
from from school, I entered the news media industry, and just like the world, the news industry is as chaotic. No 2 days are the same. You see the best and worst of humanity in the news, from stories of great courage, stories of great amity, stories of great kindness, to the most deplorable stories of the human condition. So to a great extent, when you're a writer and when you're someone who's inclined towards the creative arts, these kind of things do affect you. They don't affect you immediately. Many people say that journalists have become passive to the ups and downs of the human condition and to all the destruction and negativity in the world. But
Basically, yeah, not to the feelings, positive
yeah,
feelings or
yeah.
positive.
But no matter how many times you see the same kind of negativity portrayed in the media again and again and again, every time it's affected me somewhere at a personal level. So
Okay.
for me, it's always been how do I deal with those feelings? Because in a newsroom, you are so constrained by time, you don't even have time to digest how you're feeling about a news story. and because you have to get to the next news story, so it bottles up inside you, and it needed a kind of a release. And for me, poetry again came to the rescue. It was again therapeutic for me, and in that sense, I would always the office where I work is just a few kilometers away from where I live, and many times I would go for a nice long walk after work. And I think that's when I started in those long walks after work. I started digesting what I was going through when I was when the Triple Talaq stories, when Triple Talaq was at the height of its coverage, when stories of martyrs in J&K, stories of Kashmiri Pandit refugees, and stories which actually affected me. How do I make sense of them? It was on those walks where I try to kind of piece my thoughts together. And we live in times where where you have a smartphone, so I would just whip out, if I would think of a line, I would whip out my smartphone, go to the notes section, and if it's a great line in my head, and I would just write it down. And slowly and steadily, when with 20 or 40 outlines over a couple of days, I have a poem ready, and then I would go to it, I would edit it, and that's how one by one my poems got written, got developed. But to a great extent, it happened because of my experience in the newsroom. One very small example is one of my most celebrated poems is "Am I Not God's Child," which is a poem I wrote on the Triple Talaq, on the Triple
Got it.
Talaq issue. How I started writing that poem was, there was this visual I remember when we were doing the stories, where it was this woman who was clad in a burqa, and she had been given a triple talaq by her husband. And the visual was, she was outside the gate of her house, and she would hold the grill of the gate, and she was violently shaking it. And for for our coverage, it was one of 100 pieces of visuals which we were doing for that story. But for some reason, I couldn't get that image out of my head. For some reason, I couldn't get that image out of my head, and every day it would stay with me some way or the other. It would stay with me, no matter what story we're doing, no matter where we've gone with other stories. That image just stayed with me, and I had to make sense of it somehow. I had to kind of digest
Went
that,
out of feeling.
yeah, that feeling inside me. So I spoke to a couple of triple talaq victims. I spoke to the activists, and it really helped me shape my narrative, and it helped me write that poem where you realize at one point that it is a kind of a system of victimization of women, but at the same time, women also don't, especially in the Muslim faith, don't know the tenets of Islam, don't know the words, don't know the teachings in the Quran. So to a great extent, they can't counter the clerics when the clerics say this is the way how a marriage should operate. So
Correct.
how at the end of the day, so it was a dual kind of a problem at the dual kind of a problem, because at one point they were subjugated because they were economically and socially weaker than their male counterparts, but at the same time
Yes.
they weren't as aware of the tenets of Islam, where it is evident that it is anti-Islamic, triple talaq. But the women themselves, because they are ordered by the clerics to follow the tenets of Islam, they just abide by those rules instead of studying the text themselves. So that complexity of the problem came out, and poetry was a huge therapeutic tool, which till this day I use to kind of make sense of that emotional kind of cyclone which goes inside you whenever you're doing the news.
Correct. And so, why only poems? Why not writing novel or kind of something like that, short articles or that? Why only
Well,
poetry?
I always feel that poetry is something people remember more. I mean, like Shakespeare once said, brevity is the soul of wit. And I think if you can pack in layers and layers of emotion in one line, and anchor it with multiple contexts, and kind of, it becomes a very loaded line. and those
Hmm.
lines have greater retention as compared to long lines of prose. I think that's why poetry is so powerful at the end of the day, because in one line you can communicate so many things, and which is why poems written decades ago and centuries ago are still so relevant today. I mean, my favorite poem is by Lord Tennyson, Ulysses, and his one
Okay.
line talks about the entire struggle of Ulysses to strive, to seek, to find, and never yield. That is a line where, if you, at one point, you can consider the struggle of Ulysses to find himself, and that line
Hmm.
encapsulates his entire struggle. But on the other hand, that line extrapolates itself to everyone's experience, that in life you have to strive, seek, and find, and never yield. And 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 what he captured in that line, why that
Hmm.
poem is so eternal, it's a poem of self discovery. And no matter which generation you're living in, we're all looking for meaning in our lives. And so that
Correct.
poem continues to be relevant no matter which generation you live in, primarily because of that line. And it expands itself to a larger universe. And I think that's the power of poetry, that it expands itself across generations, across cultures, because it encapsulates a universal human experience in just a few lines, which has a
Few.
much greater impact than a long pieces of text which you may find in a novel.
Okay. So it is said that interest is an important element in news. So this statement defines news or how?
Interest, you're saying.
Yes, interest is an important element of news. Can this statement define news, or is there other elements also?
I mean, of course, news is a very complex thing. Beyond interest, um, it's news is very multi-layered. There are different kind of aspects that we try to put out when it comes to news delivery. One, of course, is the pursuit of truth. What is the news? What is the reality? Then you come to
Huh.
pursuit of justice, and there are certain news stories which, regardless of interest, become public interest no matter where they come from, or how they begin. So news is a very complex beast, but the aim is, in for any journalist at the end of the day, is to take any piece of news, be it sports, crime, international, and how do you universalize its kind of reach to the people, so that it can touch everyone's interests, instead of those who may just be interested in sports or world affairs or politics.
Agree.
So
Huh.
so the aim is to how to expand a news narrative to cover as many people as possible,
So again, it's like a poetry.
in a way,
Again, it
because
goes.
yeah, of course, that's a very apt comparison, because through your poems, you are trying to communicate one context to a wider audience. Like, I'll give another example. I wrote this poem called Rama's Lament, where it's about how Ram misses his wife, and he's full of regret because of what he did to Sita. and
Hmm.
and I remember whenever I would go to a poetry session, there'd be a lot of lovely female poets who would write poems criticizing Ram. They would write poems
Okay.
criticizing Ram, and they would write poems, a message to my daughter: please don't be like Sita. Don't let a man control your life. But I always thought of it from a different perspective, where why can't Ram be a person who understands that he made a mistake,
Hmm.
who knows that, who did love his wife, who moved heaven and earth to get her back from Lanka, but who knows that in the name of being a king he made a huge mistake. And and I think why, and many people have loved that poem, I think because it was taking a context of the Ramayana, but talking about a man who regrets his actions. So, how from one very specific context, you've expanded to something that can be a little more generalized, where people can
General.
find a piece of themselves in the narrative, where it's a sad man who, even though he's revered and loved, the fact that what he did to his wife, he's full of regret about it. And I think many people attach themselves in some form to
Some
the
form
narrative
or
of
the
that.
other. Yes, there are at times there are certain views which you think in your head but cannot voice it out. So this is
Hmm.
what happened to you. You took a generalized topic or generalized view and then gave the other side of the view, which people may be relating to it, may be thinking of it, but cannot voice it out because of the societal norms, of course, or
Yeah,
the
I think
generalization.
I think at the end of the day, it's all about how you make the argument. Um, you can make we live in a very in the Twitterverse. It is quite a toxic discourse that goes on where uh, the opinions which are the most explosive, which are the most offensive, tend to get the most traction. But I always
Correct.
feel that you can make a great argument for all perspectives, but in a very calm and concerted and in a very dignified manner. So,
Hmm.
regardless of societal norms, I feel
Hmm.
framing an argument is essential to get it across. Because what happens
Okay.
is, if you then delve into the negativity of language, then your message completely gets lost. Then it's all about
Correct.
the negativity of the intent instead of the cogent nature of the argument.
Mm, yeah. Okay, tell me, you were in the front line of the COVID news or the front warriors, what we call. So, how did you try and spread the message or information or the facts? How did you help people during this time?
I mean, I think just by going to the office and doing the news on a day-to-day basis to all our viewers, I uh, I I think while I was just doing my job, it is I feel especially in the age of social media where so much misinformation can be spread about COVID-19 symptoms and the state of the
Numbers.
country as such and cures and there is so much not just vitriol but misleading information out there. I think
Correct.
traditional news channels and print media and traditional and sorry mainstream online media
Mainstream.
huge
Hmm.
role in this time to kind of debunk the fake news out there and at the same time give a very not only a clear picture about where this nation is headed amid the pandemic but also at the end give direct clear concise and correct information to the public the because social media is unregulated anyone can post
Yes.
whatever conspiracy theory they want and if you look at the
Correct.
United States many of those conspiracy theories come from people in positions of leadership namely Donald Trump.
Hmm.
So in those situations where even people in positions of authority are giving you wrong information, that's where the role of the traditional media, print, online, or even
And
broadcast form, has become
hmm.
so important. And I think which is why uh, it's gained that significance, especially when in this unprecedented time when we are battling a pandemic where we on a day-to-day basis have only 50% of the information.
Okay. You only get 50% of the information.
I mean, in the sense, the public only gets 50%
Public.
of the
Okay.
information, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Correct.
And when they switch on the news, and on a
Huh.
daily basis, we are struggling to fill in the gaps all the time. Get from our reporters, the health ministry, people on the ground, to give a very clear, concise picture of what is the state of the country, where are we headed, um, what conditions should be implemented so that we can flatten the curve and come out on the other side. So traditional news media is playing a very important role, especially in this social media era where a lot of fake news is spread.
So, sir, you just said you get news from the various sources like health ministry. Well, any news you get from various sources. Can you tell us the importance of the news sources and do they make news or how it goes?
I mean, we get news from a lot of sources, but we go through a rigorous editorial process to decide its authenticity, and its importance in the public interest. So
Correct.
just by getting news from sources doesn't mean that we just get it and we put it on air. It goes
Okay.
through a rigorous editorial vetting.
Okay.
Is the source reliable? Is the news in the public interest? And then it comes out into the fore. And I think
Public.
that is the difference between social media and traditional news media, where social media you can just put it out there, and
Correct.
especially people with certain authority and certain following, they can do a lot of damage by spreading such information which is
Exactly.
unverified, which is why traditional news
Yes.
media goes through an extensive vetting process.
So, sir, at times you may be getting information from so many sources. So,
Hmm.
as you said, it goes through rigorous process. But how do you
Yeah,
decide which news is, which
I
source is correct or not? Which
I mean,
source is correct or
it depends. It depends from on the reliability of the source. And and it depends upon how how long you've been working with the source, how credible is the source. um, so there are a lot of complicated editorial processes. We sit on a lot of information till we realize that it is correct, it is reliable, it is not fake. And I think a lot of questioning, a lot of kind of discussion goes into it. And I think we do that for every piece of information, and our reporters also, to a great extent, have a network of very reliable sources which you build over time. So when
okay,
you have a rapport with a source, you know that this person is a reliable source of information,
reliable.
and the person would not give the reporter fake information. But
Got
even after that, we need to sit on it. It goes through a rigorous vetting process,
process.
because the last thing you want to do is put fake news out there.
Correct. So, sir, any such experience or incident which you can share where your thoroughness to the news made a great impact on the overall scenario or the news?
um I need to think about that. I think I think if you talk about us doing news on Jammu and Kashmir, um, to a great extent, you get a lot of source-based information, because there's so many different avenues of getting news in Jammu and Kashmir. There's so many source-based inputs. Um, but when it comes to security issues, when it comes to security operations primarily,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
it is very important that you get your information from the right source, and that your reporter, who is, and we have a very experienced J&K bureau chief,
Report.
and and they have to be the ultimate gatekeepers of that information, through
Okay.
social media, through others. In WhatsApp also you get so many forwards, and people just
Yes.
spreading information.
Yes.
So I think that, especially when there is a lot of uh, uh, JNK is going through a lot of change with the abrogation of Article 370, and a lot of things being
Yes.
implemented over there. We get bombarded with a lot of information. Uh, but I think a system which is in, but we have a system in place where our JNK bureau chief and our other respected sources are our final gatekeepers. So no matter, when it comes to JNK, we get bombarded with a lot, but we tend to kind of like ignore the noise and just go to our sources and news inputs and be like, is this correct? Can we go with this? And so a lot of critical information about the government's plans post 370 security operations in the state.
Yes.
I think we've got those. Our reporting has been very good because we've depended upon the right information sources, and at the same time, the right gatekeepers.
So, sir, how do you part the sensitive information? Any such incident you can share? Some very sensitive. How do you pass? For public, it is sensitive, not for
Sensitive information. We haven't been really dealing with that kind of news for a very long time. Sensitive information, but if you talk about sensitive information from um, We wait
public.
for a go ahead from our government sources.
Okay.
That's the only thing. Otherwise, you
Okay.
you can't put out sensitive information, like big government announcements, major policy reforms, and all of that. You wait for the government to give the go ahead, because the government is also working under different constraints
Hmm.
to kind of implement their policies and change. So you wait for the government go ahead, because in the reform drive, and in the push to make, as Prime Minister Modi says, Naya Bharat, you have to be on the government's side, especially when they're pushing their policies to improve the system.
Policy.
And
Correct.
and because it's sensitive information, only when you get the go ahead from your government sources, that's when it is prudent to put it out. Otherwise,
Okay.
it causes a lot of problems otherwise.
So you go live almost 24 by 7, the news. So any one thing which you have learned from the mistakes of online, I mean, not mistake, I would term as some, unforeseen, not your favoring situation, which you have learned something that you can share.
What I have learned from the 24-hour news.
No, from the any mistake or any unforeseen situation which comes to your front, anything.
Well, unforeseen situations are breaking news at the end of the day. They're all unforeseen. Like yesterday, I'll just tell you about yesterday. Yeah, yesterday itself.
Incident.
Uh, uh, Dhoni at 7:30 just put on his Instagram page, "I'm retiring from international cricket," and
Right.
no one could kind of no one predicted that
Okay.
that was going to happen. Uh, so I think what happens is that in news media, because you're always bombarded with breaking news, you always you are trained for the unknown. You're always trained for
Hmm.
the unknown, and at the same time, you also learn this trick, that in that pursuit to be the first to break the news, if you are if you are late to do the if you are late, let's say, to put the news out, then that doesn't matter, because at the end of
Yeah.
the day, you need to get the news right first and then put it out. But let's
Correct.
say, due to different pressures and factors, you do put the news out and it turns out to be wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
uh, I remember that my very first managing editor once told me this line: in television news, no mistake lasts for more than a minute.
Okay. That's
So,
nice.
in television news, you always have the opportunity to reinvent yourself. Uh,
Correct.
to you can make a mistake, but 5 minutes later, because it's a constant cycle, you can put out the right information, and that mistake is erased. It's different from
Is
print, where if you print out a mistake, that mistake stays for the entire day. But with television, you
entirely
are more malleable, because it's a living, breathing organism. And
correct.
so what it's taught me is that always be ready for the unknown. So that's why we're always ready for any breaking news, no matter what. And at the same time,
Lovely.
all try to get the news out as soon as possible. But if you see a mistake, do whatever you can to rectify it, to get the correct version out. So you're in a
Uh,
constant churn of news when you're in that newsroom,
correct.
and it's quite a rush. And I think if you stay in the newsroom for more than 5 years, you realize that that rush is something you thrive on and you enjoy, because it's a great work environment where no 2 days are the same.
Correct. No second, no 5 minutes are also same because one
Oh,
day
5 minutes
you
are
are
the same.
sitting.
Yeah, so
Correct.
true. Yeah,
Lovely word. Like no minute, no mistake lasts more than a minute. Superb
yeah,
words
no
by
mistake last
your.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, generally you take interviews of people. Like, and it is said that interview is something between a monologue and a dialogue. So
Hmm.
how do you see it while you are taking interview of people? How do you bring it live, or how do you take?
I think to take a great interview is to ask a relevant question at the end of the day. Um, to and then a question which can make the interviewee just open up with information. So just like poetry, where you try to create get to the nub of an issue in one line, the aim of a good question in an interview is to ask the clincher in least amount of words, so that the interviewee gets hit by the question and just opens up and just goes into a flow. So it's very important to frame the right question, and it 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 is a dialogue. It is a dialogue, if depending on the topic, but many a times you want to hear a monologue from someone who's
Correct.
relevant in the news, and you want to hear their side of the story. So it's
Right.
a
Right.
balance between the two. I mean, when you're talking about politics, when you're talking about governance, then you're asking tough questions. So that is a dialogue between two sides, where you demand
Of course.
answers, where you
Yes.
demand answers, you demand the truth, you demand answers to big questions: how, what, when, where, why.
Yes.
But when you're
Yes.
interviewing a person of interest who has done something great, or who is at the center of a news story, you want that person to give their side of the story and talk about their experience as much as possible. So, but you want to ask that kind of question which unleashes the monologue. So
You have
I
to.
think I think it's a delicate balance between the two. But the common thread between both scenarios is that you have to ask the right questions. You have
Right
to ask
question.
uh, the most cogent and crisp question in the least amount of words. And it's like writing a poem. How you can get that punch in the least amount of words.
Hit the hammer at the right spot. Then only the other person will open up.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay, so you talked about if there is government or political person you are interviewing, you generally ask, what, where, when, how, all the big questions. So I want to ask that compared to other country, our country online media or the print media is generally lenient to the government in asking the questions. So, in your case, online media, how does it happen? Who decides which questions to be asked, and how we can change? That we generally say that we shouldn't be lenient on asking the questions, or we should ask this, but there is no starting point to the process. So, how do we change that thing?
I mean, it all depends upon the news story that you're doing. I mean, there are certain news stories which, when the government is firefighting something, you have
Hmm.
to, in that scenario, you have to be on the side of the government when it comes to issues of national security, when it comes to issues of development. You have to take the government side. Um,
Correct.
because at the end of the day, if you see that there is a genuine if there is a major crisis, and there's a genuine push, and an unprecedented push to create change, and at the same time there is an unprecedented crisis which uh, the entire nation is united in firefighting,
Hmm.
you need a sense of unity between the citizenry and the government, and the media plays a
Okay.
huge role in that. And
Of
especially
course.
during COVID times, when we all should come together, when the government is advocating all these safety norms
Yes.
and cooperation, the media plays a huge role in trying to push that forward, because it is for the benefit of the entire country. So in
Right.
those cases, the narrative is very simple. You have to uh, bolster the government's efforts to achieve a certain end game.
Okay.
In other complicated issues where the government has promised something and you feel there are lapses in delivery, they are valid questions to ask, and you take and like an unbiased media, uh, how it's supposed to be. You take the government's view, you ask the right question, why XYZ have not been delivered, and you get the government's view, and you put forward that view, that whether you feel the argument is substantive or not. So
Correct.
it is, like I said, the news is a very dynamic beast. Um, no no news story is handled in one way on a day-to-day basis. One news story can be handled in one way, in one, day two, it will be something else. But at the end of the day, the issue is that how do you serve the public interest? That is the most important thing. And you can only do that by asking the right questions, but at the right time.
Right.
The time to ask the right questions are very important, and which is why I feel that the traditional news media, especially in these COVID times, has done a great deal to bolster our efforts to flatten the curve. And the news media has been pretty much on the front lines of that effort. And
Yes.
and I think our the awareness drive, the debunking of fake news, reporting on medical lapses. The news media has been very critical of medical lapses in different parts of the country, and so while you're bolstering the government's efforts to spread awareness, you're also highlighting lapses in the medical infrastructure. So it's a very dynamic and multi-layered process, and I think the news media has done a great job.
Okay. Yes, they have played a bridge between public and government, both
Yeah,
ways. Their flows and fonts, both.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's essential because you're in a very unprecedented time.
Correct. Sir, how do you get the page three news? And do you think that yellow journalism is paging through this page three news?
I mean, I think at least at CNN News 18, we don't really indulge in yellow journalism. And I can't comment about yellow journalism and other news outlets. Our agenda is pure news, public interest news, and yellow journalism, we don't waste our time on.
Okay. So, given the opportunity to write a column, I know you do write articles for the Speaking Tree of the Kansas and many articles. So, if given a chance to write a column in a newspaper, which topic you would prefer and why?
Writing a column, I would want to write about whatever I want. That'd be my first que- that would be my first
Okay,
push.
so different topic.
But if they say no, you have to write about one topic, I would. Uh, I mean, see, I'm too much of a novice to write about to kind of compete with the likes of these other great columnists when it comes to politics or foreign affairs, and so I think about cultural issues. I would love to be a columnist about cultural issues, and I have written a lot of columns for the Speaking Tree and the Times of India
Yes,
on
you have.
on how popular culture is reshaping our mindset about issues,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
what I am particularly interested in is modern philosophy through the realm of popular culture, and
Hmm.
I think we now live, I feel, in the golden era of television and movies.
Audio.
Uh, because of Netflix and the huge kind of content, that
Yes.
wide variety of content that you have. There's some beautiful pieces of art over there, which are helping us redefine what popular culture actually is, and
Yes.
liberalizing popular culture. And it's mobilizing very interesting philosophical debates and issues, and I feel like, as a student of philosophy myself, I love framing traditional philosophy through the realm of modern popular culture, and I've written a lot about it in Speaking Trade, the Batman philosophy, the Joker philosophy, how Star Wars takes elements of Vedic philosophy in promoting it through popular
Yes.
culture. Those are very interesting to me because it shows that no matter what generation you live in, the basic tenets of human philosophy find different popular culture vehicles to promote themselves. Gurukul in the Vedic era, Star Wars in some shape or form in the 21st
Modern.
century. Yeah,
Right.
so that is very interesting to me, and I would love to continue writing columns about modern philosophy.
Okay. So, any such myth or tradition or belief which you think ये सदियों से चला आ रहा है but ये नहीं इसका different side of the view भी होता है something like that which you
Um,
would
I mean, in the sense, I feel like if you look at all our great, sorry, if you look at all our um, uh, how do I put this? You put me in a spot with this question. Um, this I think we in the 21st century can take creative liberties with a lot of things, and
Yes.
I feel that I think it is a testament to the society you're living in and the culture you're living in, where you can
Hmm.
see um, traditionalism from different angles. I was at the Kolkata Literature Book Fest, and there are these huge. There's now a huge cottage industry of writers where they are trying to retell the Ramayana and the Mahabharata from the perspectives of different characters. So
Correct.
there is this narrative out there. How would the Mahabharata look from the perspective of Karan's wife? Of Karan's
Right.
wife, how what her
Right.
husband went through, right? So by giving different vantage points, because now these texts are so imbibed in our culture, it's very interesting to expand our philosophical dimensions associated with these texts by trying to explore what other characters who to us were quite background characters, but
Hmm.
especially in a world where you want to explore the mindset of people across the economic and social strata, women, the underprivileged, to experience their point of view in a traditional sense, especially via traditional texts, is a very exciting thing. And I think that's gaining a lot of momentum in popular culture. And I think how we are trying to redefine the Ramayana, how we're trying to redefine the Mahabharata from the perspectives of different characters to give a different worldview to those traditional texts. I think is very. I think it's a very exciting, and and it expands our philosophical boundaries. And even on the poetry scene, how have you heard of Sita Sings the Blues, when it's about
Yes.
Sita sitting in Lanka and she's like reminiscing about how she got herself into this position. And so uh, a modern twist of multi-dimensional views to a very traditional narrative is very interesting to me, and I think it's interesting to a lot of writers who want to
Correct.
develop fresh content. And um, and I think traditional texts will always be something that writers will try to redefine, and that is something that should be encouraged, because it doesn't diminish the relevance of the text, it doesn't diminish the power of the text, it expands it to a greater degree.
Generally, it shows you the other dimension, other
Yeah.
part of. Yeah, it doesn't diminish. Correct. But
Hmm.
so this you talked about mythology, but any such tradition which we are following, or any such topic which you feel that it should be given some other view than the general based view which society thinks. Any such topic or any such thing?
um any such topic which deserves a different view.
Yes,
um
like see, okay, I have written one article on money, which says
hmm,
that we generally believe that money is you should, if you talk that you are working for money, it's bad. We generally hear people saying that we are working for passion or it's our hobby. So
hmm,
I wrote that no, it's not wrong. Money can buy you to an extent health, wealth, and happiness, everything. So
hmm.
any such thing which you would like
Well,
to
I
share?
mean, your concept is there's this great movie called Wall Street where there's this iconic character called Gordon Gekko, and he has this iconic speech that greed is good, and greed is good, and so I think those always will be relevant because they counter traditional narratives that we have about things like money and the evil of capitalism and all of that.
Yes,
I uh,
many.
yeah, I think. One thing that in a very Americanized society about this evil surrounding the notion of communism or socialism. Okay, I think that is now being redefined
Hmm.
because what we've realized is that our societies need social welfare, primarily in cases of
Yeah.
health and essential services. And
Right.
And I think that is getting redefined around the world because the capitalist society is leaving a lot of people behind, and is a leaving and is not addressing the issues of income inequality. So I think communism, as traditionally it was known as an evil thing which creates dictators and a product of USSR to kind of dominate the world, make the
Yes.
make the make the poor people even more poor through communism. That is getting
Suffer.
redefined in a way, and
Hmm.
in a political sense, that is getting redefined. But India has always had a kind of a welfare push. Socialism has never been a taboo word, but uh, but radicalization in the sense of socialism has always looked down upon in India, and that continues to be so. But socialism has never been a taboo in India as such, because we do believe in a more equitable society on a cultural basis, and and the government has a lot of schemes to kind of bridge the income inequality gap to just by giving the basic essentials. So communism in a Western sense is getting a rebrand because socialism
People.
has shown positive aspects. On the other hand, I
Yes.
also feel especially in India, especially in India, I think um, we earlier lived in a time where to profess the fact that you are uh, a devout Hindu
Hmm. Hmm.
was something looked as radical
Okay.
once upon a time. That it was
Okay.
looked as, it was you were seen as a radical if you said
If
I am a devout Hindu.
Hindu.
I believe in the philosophy of Ram Rajya, and in the philosophical sense that
Hmm.
Vasudeva, the whole entire world should be a family.
Yes. And
But I don't think that they were given the philosophical relevance that they are being given now. And I
okay.
think now there is less. There is a there is an attempt to redefine what it is to be a Hindu, because at first it was seen to be someone who believes in Vedic philosophy, to be someone who believes in the concept of Ram Rajya. You're a bhakt, a radical, you know. You were just pigeonholed in that sense. But
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
now it's attaining a more secularized and and philosophical edge because people are not no longer I would say um, uh, walking on eggshells when they talk about their faith,
Hmm.
especially Hinduism. I think people are a lot more bold when they're talking about their faith, but at the same time there is a radical element to that as well. But at the same time, I feel when in this pursuit of a secular narrative, we shouldn't ever lose touch with what our core beliefs and our core
Tradition.
philosophies are, because
Yeah.
secularism
Root.
doesn't need to be a-religious.
Correct.
Secularism
You should.
means to live in a sense of amity, and I feel
Yeah.
that yeah, go on.
Yes. So we should stick to our roots.
Yeah, we
You
should
mean to
stick to
say
our
that?
roots. And I'll give you another example. I think post Article 370, um, if I asked you, what are the three regions of JNK?
Okay. So three region of sorry
JNK.
JNK.
Yeah.
Yeah. I won't be able to define it.
See, see the point. See, by that I mean is that I come from Jammu. I am a
Okay.
Dogra Rajput from Jammu, but
Okay.
but the majority of my life I've been called a Kashmiri.
Okay.
Okay, because JNK is divided into three parts: Jammu,
Yes.
Kashmir, Ladakh. Right?
Ladakh. Yes.
But no matter where you come from in that state, you were always labeled Kashmiri.
Kashmiri. Okay.
Okay, now Dogras have a long and storied history. We don't talk Kashmiri, we don't dress Kashmiri, we don't eat Kashmiri, but we were always called Kashmiri. Now, post abrogation of Article 370, the identity of Jammu is now coming out to the fore. There is a there is an attempt to redefine what is JNK, because earlier it was just Kashmiri. To
Correct.
a extent, if I tell someone from Tamil Nadu today that I come from JNK, he'll call me Kashmiri. He won't call me
Kashmiri.
from Jammu.
Right. Right.
So Yeah, so that redefinition is also happening. Traditionally, everyone from J&K was called a Kashmir. But post abrogation of Article 370, where now you have two union territories, J&K and Ladakh, the people of Jammu, who are 50% of that state, are now pushing the narrative where they can be recognized as Dogras. And and
Okay.
and it's not even coming from the traditional news media. It's coming from social media, where to a great extent many people from Jammu were not getting a voice in the traditional news media. If you look at a majority of debates about J&K, it's only someone from Delhi and someone from Kashmir, never Jammu or
Hmm.
Ladakh,
Hmm. Hmm.
because the state is
Okay.
seen in totality as Kashmir. But social media has given a voice to so many Dogra leaders, Dogra activists, Dogra artists, that the difference, there's a hashtag that trends called Jammu is not Kashmir, which
Hmm.
regularly
Hmm.
trends on Twitter. And that is gaining a
Yes.
lot of attention because people from from Jammu are trying to leverage that identity that we are from J&K, but we are not Kashmiri. I'll give you just
Hmm.
one small
Hmm.
example of that. India's first cable bridge is about to be built in Katra, okay,
Hmm.
which is a place in
Hmm.
J&K. Okay,
J&K.
it is in Jammu, it is not in Kashmir. But
Okay.
majority of news channels on their online handles,
Hmm.
primarily Stuck, wrote that Kashmir is getting its first cable bridge.
Which is wrong. Not wrong, but
Hmm.
it's not wrong. Yeah, but still, Jammu people don't get their own identity.
Yeah. So what happened was that a lot of Dogra activists, they went on a Twitter rampage, tweeting. They kept highlighting that article that Katra is in Jammu, it's not in Kashmir. Please get it right, and it kept snowballing till Aaj Tak put out a correction.
Okay.
So I think social media, while it has delivered a lot of toxic narratives for a lot of stories, it's empowered a lot of people to speak out as well. and
Right.
and and that, like what you were saying, beyond the traditional media, which tends to push certain templates of certain
Hmm.
narratives, be it on faith, be it on secularism, be it on regionalism, social media has created a more diversity of opinion. And I think
Hmm.
that is a great agent that is redefining a lot of traditional narratives out there right now.
Narrative. Hmm. So coming to your book, The Silent Sun.
Mhm.
Uh, First of all, it mentions that like sun, we do many beautiful as well as unfortunate things, and we strive to be more than nothing. That is human nature. We always strive to be something little more than nothing. So,
Mm.
tell me how this silent sun happened, and what is human as per you? Human.
Um, uh, in the first page of Silent Sun, I've quoted this line from uh, one of the greatest vocalists of our generation, the lead singer
Okay.
of Audio Slave. Audio Slave. His name was Chris Cornell, and he was a great inspiration for me when I was growing up. And
Okay.
one of his songs from the band Soundgarden, um, he wrote, "Like the sun, we will live to rise. Like the sun, we will live and die, and then
Hmm.
ignite again." And that was the theme song of the first Avengers movie as well.
Okay.
So I and to me that says it all about what it is to be a human. Like we said, like few lines, but you pack in what it is to be a human in them.
Hmm.
And
Hmm. So that.
and that to me spurred the Silent Sun philosophy, where I feel that to that we're not fighting for survival anymore as a
Hmm.
species. We're not
Hmm.
fighting for
Hmm.
food, we're not fighting for water, we're not
Hmm.
fighting to survive.
Person.
So,
Correct.
so, so what is our pursuit in life? Our pursuit is to find meaning in existence. Otherwise, what are we here for at the end of the day? I mean, earlier you would live just so that you would find food, eat, and then try to find
Uh-huh.
food again so that you can just continue living.
Correct. That
But
was the
now,
basic nature. Yes. Basic
yeah,
meaning of your life.
yeah. But now that you're not fighting for survival, what are you living for? You're living for a sense of fulfillment. You're living for to find the meaning of life. Why are you here? What makes what makes you relevant in the grand scheme of things? So in that pursuit of trying to find ourselves, we make a lot of mistakes, and we make a lot of good choices as well.
Good.
And we go through a lot of joy, we go through a lot of pain, but all of it frames and slowly chips away at who we are. I feel that the philosophy which I once wrote in Speaking Tree, also called the Silent Sun philosophy, I always feel there is a version of us outside, there's a version of us inside. And our outside version is very conditioned to live in the world. We have to speak in a certain way, we have to live in a certain way, we have to say certain things, we can't be offensive in many degrees. But there is a silent sun inside of us that is constantly burning, that wants to speak out, that wants to do things beyond the norms, that wants to break orthodoxy, traditionalism, and wants to destroy all of that and live a certain life. The point you achieve enlightenment is when your outside self and your silent sun combine. And that's when your inner power is channeled out and you work towards framing a life that you've always wanted deep down. And
Correct.
and what I feel is that to achieve that balance between your outside self and your silent sun, you need to go through a lot of struggle. You need to go through a lot of pain, and you always need to remind yourself. Like there's this great line in the Rocky movies where he says that the life is not all sunshine and rainbows. It is a mean, it's a nasty place, and it doesn't matter how tough you are. It will beat you down to your knees. But life isn't about how hard you hit back. It's about how much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. So that's the message Rocky gives his son. And I feel to find that to channel your inner self, to reveal your inner self to you have to go through that struggle. And that struggle is beautiful. It's eternal. It leaves you with a lot of scars, but you come out a more fulfilled person on the other side. So it's like the sun. The sun blazes, it dies, and it gets reborn again.
Gets again. So you should
So
know the fire within you, and it's like scars ko bhi love karo. If you start loving your own scars, if you stop hiding it, if you have courage to live with it, then you are a winner.
yeah, of course. And never be afraid. And to be human is to always redefine yourself, and to make mistakes and to be a better version of yourself. So so the sun gives life and it destroys at the same time. We humans have the power to create and destroy at the same time. We do it almost every day. So we in a ways are like the sun, but we should always ultimately fulfill that ultimate philosophy of the sun, where we should blaze with all our glory, and even if that destroys us, it gives us the opportunity to be reborn again
Reborn.
and try it another way. Yeah. So that's pretty much the
Like
silence.
a phonics. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you plan, organize, and prioritize your work? Being an poet, being a news editor, being a TEDx speaker, attending so many literature festivals, everything. How do you do it?
Um, I do it because I want to do it. I mean, I always feel that if you want to do something, you will always make time for it. You know, from
Correct.
from work to even relationships. If you really want something to succeed, you will make time for it. And
You'll make time.
and I always and I always felt that if the things I really want to do, and the things I really want to pursue, the things I want to, I want to do things that challenge me. I want to do things that expand my horizons. And in the newsroom, there is what we were taught when we were trainees is that the only way you can you're always bad at something before you're good at it.
Hmm.
That's what they used to say. And the only way you can swim in the news pool is if you jump first in the deep end.
Jump.
Yeah, jump first in the deep end. So
Correct.
my if I go by my life experience, it's pretty much been jumping into the deep end and drowning and coming back up to the surface and learning how to swim. So I've never been afraid of pushing myself, of going the extra mile and making time for a lot of things. But I do it because I know it's something that will expand my horizons, and it's something I really want to do. So in that 24 hours, even you, if you really want, you can squeeze in a lot of time, because what I've realized is if you don't want to do anything, you can kill so much time. You end up killing so much time. 24
You
hours is
have
a lot
thousand
of hours.
excuses. Okay.
Yeah, 24 hours is a lot of hours. And if you really want to do something, you can really make the time for it.
Great. Small rapid fire questions, fast
Okay.
questions.
Okay.
Okay. Field news, yeah, TV news.
Sorry, say it again. Say it again. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Field field news, yeah, TV news.
TV
On
news.
ground news, TV news. Book or column writing.
Column writing.
Poetry. Do you like haikus and haibus? Do you write that?
No, no, no.
Poetry.
I'm
You
not really. No,
okay?
no.
Debatable news. Okay. Debatable news or simple news.
Debatable news.
Okay. Um, like favorite news anchor apart from you.
I'm not my favorite news anchor. My favorite news anchor, I remember when I was growing up, Srinivasan Jain and at NDTV.
Hmm. Okay. If given a chance, whom would you like to interview first? Prime Minister or Sachin Tendulkar?
Prime Minister, any day, please, Prime Minister Modi. He is an enigma, and I would really want to understand what makes him tick. Yeah,
Uh, Tie or blazer? Which thing you choose first in the morning?
tie.
Okay. Apart from, I know you are kind of mama's boy, Thai lover. Apart from that, what are your hobbies? What Ayushman is like?
I am a huge fan of. I love watching foreign cinema. I love watching movies
Okay.
from abroad.
Okay.
And I think that's why I love that we live in this Netflix era where we have such a treasure trove of movies.
You can access. Yes. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. I love reading philosophy, and
Okay.
primarily Eastern philosophies. And among the Western philosophers, Nietzsche is one of my favorite philosophers, Friedrich Nietzsche, and I love reading his work. And yeah, and now that, but we're in lockdown right now, so I love going on hikes. I love going on. I love swimming, but because of lockdown, that's like completely out of the picture. So we're not be able to
Yeah.
do that. But and I love traveling to exotic locations in India. And I think like in India there is so many unexplored places that we haven't gone to, and I have only scratched the surface of great places to go in India. And once the lockdown gets lifted, now I have this greater resolve to go to the northeast and the southern states
Hmm.
and explore those kind of gems in the northeast and in the south, and
Hmm.
really get a great taste of the country.
Okay. And so there was one article of yours, feminism, then females interpretation, something like that. Tell us about that.
My that's those are my thoughts about the modern feminism. That modern feminism, more than seeking equality, at least in the current sense, uh, is seeking exceptionalism. So in the sense, it's seeking a quota more than equality with men. So that was my critique of that philosophically, when you are supposed to fight for equality, like the civil rights struggle, where you want the same rights as other races and other counterparts. To pursue quotas kind of undermines that message. So
Okay.
I feel and like in the modern feminist struggle, it's less about equality and more about exceptionalism. And and I always feel that I think if you really want to, like, I would call myself a feminist, even though a lot of people say I can't be a feminist because I'm a man. But I call myself a feminist because I'm a great student of the suffragette movement and the feminist struggle. And if you go into the history of the suffragette movement, before, at that time, only people who had who had property and who had wealth had the right to vote. Women didn't have the right to vote, but men with no property also didn't have the right to vote. So the suffragette movement, which started to give the right to women to vote, first achieved universal voting rights for all men, regardless of
Hmm.
property, regardless of wealth. So
Hmm.
all men, because of a struggle of women, got the
Hmm.
right to vote in
Benefit.
Britain. Yeah,
Yeah.
they benefited from the suffragette movement first, and
Correct.
it was only after all men got the right to vote that women then got the right to vote.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
if you look at the suffragette movement in its entirety, it achieved voting rights not just for women, it achieved voting rights for everyone. Suffragette movement, while it's
Equality.
seen as, yeah, it achieved equality for all. And that is the mission, or should be the mission of feminism, equality for
Hmm.
all. It shouldn't push a narrative where uh, where women, because if you focus on female exceptionalism, you focus on the patriarchal stereotypes which have put women in the background.
Back.
Because,
Hmm.
yeah,
Backstep.
because focusing on exceptionalism, you are elevating the patriarchal tropes that have oppressed women for centuries. So
Correct. Correct.
I feel the pursuit of modern feminism should be equality and not exceptionalism. You should equip women to fight for equality in all fields. You should feminists should be driven to fight for the gender neutrality of laws, not not a bias towards one gender or the other. So I
Correct.
feel modern feminism is losing its support in that case because it pushes female exceptionalism instead of equality, which is the
Hmm.
root of the movement, as it
Hmm.
was shown by the suffragette movement in the early
Hmm.
1900s.
Correct. Okay. So where can we find you? I mean, your Insta handle or somewhere. Where can we read your articles or your poems more?
I think you guys can buy Silent Sun. It's on Amazon. Otherwise, I don't. I used to put on my poems online and on the web, but now I don't do that anymore. I think I just like to write a piece of work and get it published. My articles, I think I'm just a Google search away. Um, Primarily on the Speaking Tree website and the Times of India website, you can find my articles.
Okay.
Um, I haven't written something in a very long time because of the news cycle, and because of
Hmm.
COVID times, our workload has really increased, and I really
Hmm.
haven't had the time to digest my feelings about lockdown and everything. Uh, but yeah, but I you're as a writer, you're in a constant state of flux. You're constantly looking for inspiration, and my message to all the writers is that always keep expressing yourself, and at the same time keep absorbing the world around you. I feel that the greatest life lesson you can learn as a writer is editing, because
Editing. Hmm.
you have to edit life also many times. Life throws you a lot of
Hmm.
things,
Hmm.
and you have to edit the good things and the constructive things, and delete the negative things. So those
Correct.
constructive and those beautiful things only make you a better person and a better writer. So if you're a writer out there, start editing life for you to get the best out of it.
Wonderful. And sir, when can we expect your new book or something? Are you working on
uh,
it? Another book?
I honestly, I'll tell you, whenever I'm currently working on a novel about my great granduncle, who was the first Mahavir Chakra recipient of
Yes.
independent India and his
Yes.
1947 war. So I'm still working on it. I'm working on the text for that. In the meantime, what always happens is that when I'm writing a novel, I end up writing a lot of poems in the middle of it. And once the poem count reaches 20 or 25, I'm like, okay, this is enough. I can make a book out of this. So in the pursuit of writing a novel, I end up writing poetry
Writing
books.
up.
Yeah. So you never know. I think I'll still struggle to write this novel, and in the process, another poetry book might just come out. So you never know.
Wonderful.
I can never predict these things. I always wait for me to reach that number 20, and once I hit that number, a book comes out.
Oh, lovely. Okay, so thank you, sir. It was really wonderful, knowing so much about news, which we feel कि ये तो कितना easy है यार, news आते ही ये लोग बोल देते, it's nothing much a big deal. But now we come to know that there is lot of process, lot of struggle, lots of editing, what you go through, the churn of emotions. You, I mean, don't even get time to feel also at times the news. You just have to and deliver it. So we got a lot to know about the life philosophy as well from the book Silent Sun. So thank you so much. We are honored. And I thank all my viewers on behalf of Ahmedabad Book Club and Karma Foundation and Ayushman sir for being here and making the interesting evening conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a
Bye
pleasure.
bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Take care.